Well, good evening, everybody. Hi. Thank you so much for coming to tonight's forum. My name is Allison Malik. For those who live in Oak Bluffs, I am your library director. For those out of town, welcome to the Oak Bluffs Public Library. When I'm not moving chairs or setting up 12-year-old AV, I'm very proud to call this library home. There was a recent documentary made about libraries that said that libraries are the last bastion of democracy, and I really hold that to be true. Libraries are made for everyone, libraries are for all, and that is what we do. So we are particularly honored when the League of Women Voters said we are going to do our first in-person candidate forum in the last couple of years. So they are back hosting our sheriff candidates, and I will let B introduce them, but welcome to the Oak Bluffs Public Library, and without further ado, here is B from the League of Women Voters.
Thank you very much, Allison. This is a wonderful venue for us, and we really appreciate you sharing it. Good evening. I'm Bee Fear, and on behalf of the Martha's Vineyard League of Women Voters, I would like to welcome you to the candidate forum for the office of Sheriff of Dukes County. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization and has as its mission improving our systems of government through citizen education and advocacy. It neither supports nor opposes candidates for office at any level. I have with me here Sheriff Robert Ogden, who is running for re-election, and Eric Blake, who is a retired Chief of Police of Oak Bluffs. Each will start with a 5-minute introduction, and then there will be time for questions, rebuttals, and closing remarks. I ask everyone to be brief and on point. We have decided to use first names during this forum. Sheriffs are elected enforcement officials. There are 14 sheriffs in Massachusetts, one for every county. They serve terms of 6 years, which is the longest term that state officials can serve in Massachusetts. Sheriffs play an important role in the criminal legal system. They have several key responsibilities that have profound effects on community safety. They oversee the county jails, lockups, and houses of correction, including living conditions, access to addiction treatment, and mental health services. They control multi-million-dollar budgets allocated by the state legislature. Sheriffs can offer educational, vocational, and transitional programs to ensure people re-enter their communities in a positive way. And our two candidates are going to start with their 5-minute welcoming opening remarks. Bob, we'll start with you. Why should you be re-elected?
Thank you, Bea. Hello, League of Women Voters. I'm so happy to be with you today. Can you hear me now? Yeah. All right. So I'll try to lean into it, okay? Again, hello everybody for coming. League of Women Voters. Really happy to be with you this evening. Really sorry that Judy couldn't be here with us. Our thoughts and prayers with her. She actually came down with COVID. We were concerned that Eric and I were going to come down with her too because we shared a little time with her, but we're here in person. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the incredible work and commitment to Island Voters, League of Women Voters provides. And for those of you not familiar with my career, I'd like to share my background. My entire career, over 32 years, has been with the Dukes County Sheriff's Office. After receiving a Bachelor of Science degree in Criminal Justice and Law Enforcement, I was hired by the Dukes County Deputy Sheriff's Office and have held every position, including correctional officer, all the way of being elected your sheriff in 2016. During my tenure, I've come to understand that being the sheriff in Massachusetts is one of the most unique and multifaceted in all of corrections, all of enforcement, law enforcement, requiring a diverse skill set which bridges local, state, and federal government. The Sheriff of Dukes County is not a police officer. He is a chief law enforcement officer and manager of a 5-discipline agency responsible for jail and lockup, medium security, house of correction, civil process, community outreach, and of course, near and dear to my heart, E911 regional communication system. The Sheriff's Office is funded through general appropriation and competitive state grants, requiring the sheriff to also be a lobbyist and an advocate in the legislature for funding each year through Joint Ways and Means, State E911 Department, and Administrative and Finance. In my 6 years as sheriff, I focused on leading with a progressive, proactive, and team-centered approach. I am proud of the progress we made under my term. We have improved the safety of our community through a completely updated communication system and increased transparency through Public Safety Advisory Board committees involving police, fire, EMS, and town administrators. In my term, we increased employee incomes across the board, well above the state standard, introduced wellness programming and education incentives, and rebuilt our administration. Our efforts were recognized by a clean bill of organizational and fiscal health we received by the State Auditor's Office after the Performance and Compliance Audit of 2019. In my term, I secured over $14 million in state funding for the Dukes County Sheriff's Office, including a $6 million allocated for future repairs and replacement of our aging facility, to include housing units for females. We have built relationships with our community through enhanced community outreach programs, serving our island veterans, youth, senior citizens, individuals with autism, hunger-challenged families, individuals with Alzheimer's and dementia, and much more. We have a responsibility within the criminal justice system to be a proactive for the people and communities we serve, to continuously learn, and to put best practices into action. During my term as sheriff, we incorporated restorative justice principles, providing access to supportive programs to reduce recidivism in our justice-involved individuals. Each inmate works one-on-one with a multidisciplinary team led by our staff case manager to develop an individualized therapeutic plan, increasing access to education, resources, quality health care, and evidence-based mental health support services. I am proud to share that our first PREA audit was successful, and that we have implemented evidence-based medically assisted treatment programs, MAT programs. My hard work was recognized by all 13 sheriffs of the Commonwealth, individually endorsing me for re-election as a reflection of their support for what I have accomplished in Dukes County during my term. It's my great honor to serve as your sheriff. I look forward to answering questions.
Thank you very much, Bob. Eric?
Thank you.
Why should we elect you?
Thank you. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight, and I want to thank the sheriff for participating with me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Eric Blake. I was born and raised here on Martha's Vineyard. My father was a school teacher in Edgartown, and my mother was a baker who worked from our home in West Tisbury. I am married to my wife, Katie, and I have 3 amazing children, Parker, Izzy, and Addison. I possess sound business acumen, having previously owned a successful luxury livery service, and I am presently co-owner of Blitz Fitness, a martial arts fitness studio where we teach Taekwondo to ages 3 to adulthood. The director of this past weekend's successful Beach Road Weekend Concert Series selected me as the chief of security for the festival. The Weekend Concert Series hosts over 10,000 people a day for 3 days, all without significant incident. I was honored to be sought out for my experience, knowledge, and leadership abilities to help ensure a safe weekend for concert goers and the staff. I commenced my public safety career in 1987 as a parking and traffic officer and as a deputy sheriff at the Dukes County House of Correction. I initiated my service as a police officer with the Oak Bluffs Police Department the following year. I served the department with distinction in every role, as a police officer, sergeant, field training officer, problem-solving instructor, training and hiring supervisor, accreditation supervisor, and lieutenant. On January 13, 2013, the department completed its first on-site accreditation assessment and earned statewide certification through the Massachusetts Police Accreditation Commission. On that day, I was honored to be sworn in as the police chief for Oak Bluffs. I served the town of Oak Bluffs as its chief of police for over 19 years, retiring this past June to seek the Democratic nomination for Dukes County Sheriff. During my tenure, I was fortunate to provide leadership to the law enforcement profession locally in Dukes County and throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I served as president of the Massachusetts Chiefs of Police Association and the Southeastern Mass Chiefs of Police Association. In those roles, as the elected representative of my police chief counterparts, I consistently worked with state senators and representatives, as well as the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security and the Governor's Office to get needed law enforcement funding and associated initiatives passed. As president of the Mass Chiefs Association, my most notable achievement was changing state laws regarding suitability standards for firearms identification cards. This change allows police chiefs to apply similar suitability standards to firearms identification cards as we do for concealed handgun permits. At that time, it was a dangerous loophole that during my leadership got corrected. Also, I was honored to serve in leadership posts with the International Association of Chiefs of Police, also known as the IACP, the most prominent chiefs organization in the world with over 32,000 members. The IACP is the organization that guides police policy, establishes best practice, and is the leader in shaping the future of law enforcement, especially in the United States. Only a select few chiefs get to serve on the boards and committees that set the course for that organization and the police profession. I have served on the IACP as a member of the Civil Rights Committee, which I also chaired. I am currently a member of the Community Policing Committee, the committee that developed and defined community policing for its members and the profession. I also serve on its board of directors, the governing body that sets policy on budgets, promulgates rules, and provides direction for the police profession. It's indeed been an honor to serve the IACP. In 2020, the town of Oak Bluffs endeavored unsuccessfully to fill the fire chief, ambulance chief position at the height of the pandemic. I urged the town administrator and the select board to make a decision that has rarely been accomplished in Massachusetts and appoint me director of public safety. The goal was to immediately tackle the many pressing issues facing the town's fire and ambulance service and emergency management departments, and for me to lead and oversee all public safety entities in this new role. An example of the pressing issues included the failing off-island transport business, staffing and morale problems, mending relationships between the various disciplines, and capital improvement modifications, to name a few. My appointment as Director of Public Safety allowed the town leaders to conduct a proper search for the next fire chief, while ensuring that that new fire chief had a better functioning operation on day one. The opportunity allowed me to demonstrate my leadership capabilities, my problem-solving abilities, and my collaborative form of governance outside my role as a police chief. I am also incredibly proud of my commitment to social justice, having served 5 consecutive terms, 10 years as president of the MVNAACP. I currently serve on their executive committee. I have always looked through the lens of equality and justice through my adult, private, and professional life. I have been and will continue to be steadfast in ensuring that the citizens view me and my ongoing leadership role in public safety as legitimate, and that duties and responsibilities are executed professionally with equality, equity, and justice under the law. Interestingly enough, the Dukes County Sheriff's Department's website states that the sheriff is the chief law enforcement authority in the county. I submit that my professional and personal experiences and proven track record make me the candidate best suited for that definition. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I have a couple of questions that are submitted by the league members, and I'm also invite audience to ask their questions. But I'll start with you, Eric. What do you see as your top 3 priorities for the job of sheriff if you were to be elected for the next 6-year term?
My first priority is to make sure that the voters and citizens of the island actually know the role and responsibility of the Sheriff's Department and what they do. The ACLU's Know Your Sheriff campaign states that 90% of people don't know the length of the term of the sheriff, 40% don't even know they're elected, and less than 20% can actually name their sheriff. As I did as police chief in Oak Bluffs, I'm going to form a citizens advisory committee, call it a sheriff's advisory committee. It's a group of citizens from all demographics across the age spectrum, from business, civil rights, academia. The committee's purpose is to bring concerns and questions to me for answers and clarification, and I must inform them of the Sheriff's Department's programs, policies, and future goals. That's one thing.
And Bob, what would be your top 3 priorities for your next term?
During my first term, I focused successfully on upgrading our 60-year-old communication system. There's much further to go. That is going to be one of my priorities, is to to work with the state to come to the next.
Oh, I'm sorry. Don't steal it.
As I said, we successfully upgraded a 60-year-old communication system on Martha's Vineyard and started the first true phase of the project. There's more to do. And the next phase of it would be our connection to the broader Comer system, which is the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Interoperability Radio System. When we connect to the Comer system in the Commonwealth, that will alleviate the obligation to maintain the system to any great degree. The state would then be obligated to the entire system. During this period of time, we've seen a couple of issues in certain towns, in particular Edgartown, because they don't have their own tower. We're in discussions and conversations. I actually had a very good conversation with union members and the chief of police and chief of fire about those issues there, and we've made strides towards accomplishing fixing those issues in the town. Obviously, with the new system, there's always going to be certain glitches that you have to overcome, and that's one of my priorities. The other one is my vision. The next term includes rehabilitation and replacement of the 1873 facility. We come in compliance with all state obligation. When they audit our systems, the Department of Corrections, Department of Public Health, the auditors, state auditors, we come in compliance and actually get healthy grades for all of those. The issue is that this physical plant doesn't support them, and we are actually, and many times, violated because of the issues with safe, secure, and humane facilities. It's really draconian, the facility itself. It's 1873, granite cells with iron bars, and when people say inhumane, it is. And it doesn't reflect the operation. We have a modernized operation that supports our justice involved at all times, and it's become imperative that we actually replace this facility. And I have the money available, like I said, $6 million on the table right now. This has been a 6-year process to accomplish this task, and I think that we're going to have a really good system in place to support not only our public safety collaborators, in particular the police departments, but really serve the justice-involved community with a new facility. Also, we are going to also begin to develop even more standards and policies and compliance with how we serve our justice involved. We have a very robust program that takes into account their issues as they come in the door, and is specifically designed to address the issues around restorative justice. And we've come up with a really good plan, and I think that in the next term, the execution of these will pay great dividends, in particular in education, counseling services, and several other issues that we see that are being addressed currently. So.
Thank you. Does anybody in the audience have any questions for the candidates? Yes. I don't know your name, so I can't.
Oh, hi. Thank you very much. I feel a little bit like the sting bomb and the cocktail party, but I'm still going to ask my question. We're from Families for Justice's Healing Sheriff and the National Council for Incarcerated and Formerly Incarcerated Women and Girls. We have led a campaign in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to stop further construction of jails and prisons for a 5-year moratorium. We also are working to end the incarceration of women and girls in the
And you have a
Commonwealth.
question?
I do have a question. Sheriff, you mentioned $6 million, and included in that was a mention about expanding beds for women. And I'd like to hear more about what that plan is, and
It's not expanding the bed space. We are
you said including housing units for females.
Right. And we actually have, if you consider it a holding facility for women currently, it's a closet. Right, so we need to actually develop, I think what I'm saying is we need to modernize what we have currently to provide an unencumbered space for our individuals that are being detained in the facility, in particular our female population that is really not served well in our facility. Also, we are not expanding our footprint as far as the amount of beds we are providing. The facility is archaic. The facility uses iron bars, and I don't think that anybody in this room would suggest that...
Programs for women, and what happens to women right now?
I'm sorry?
What happens to women right now?
It's about, no,
Actually, women are...
about the $6 million.
Actually, women are moved off island because we don't have a facility to actually
What is the $6 million?
retain their housing there.
What is the $6 million going to
It is for a new jail and lockup. It's actually nominal fee because if you look at some of the other facilities that were created in the Commonwealth, this actually will serve to support, in particular, lockups on Martha's Vineyard. There is no other jail and lockup on Martha's Vineyard. We're the only jail and lockup on Martha's Vineyard. So if the state doesn't support that, which is an obligation under Chapter 61, Acts of 2009, to support our facilities, all our facilities, to bring them up to code and have a humane space for these individuals, the obligation would go to the police departments in the towns. If you look at our population increases currently, 3 of the towns will go over 5,000. And as you know, once you go over 5,000, there's an obligation for that town to retain a lockup. We are the only regional lockup. If you do that, you talk about funding and finance and the obligation, that obligation would be to the police departments.
Thank you. Let me, excuse me.
Sorry?
You've asked your question, madam. Can you sit down, please? Eric, would you like to address the question of
I can't hear you.
women and the jail facilities?
There's been a gender inequality at the jail since its inception. And the fact that... Okay, to your point, the area...
We don't decide that.
No, the sheriff doesn't decide who gets put in prison. But there hasn't been...
Excuse me,
Ma'am.
madam. I think you've had your turn with your question, please.
There hasn't been one incremental improvement to the condition there. With or without funding, I will improve the conditions of the temporary lockup for the women that are incarcerated on Martha's Vineyard. It's uncalled, it's unjustified, it's uncalled for, and I've heard that there is space there, but it's not being utilized.
Does anybody else have a question? Yes, you in the back.
Hi, I'm Susan Lemoy-Zarba, and I have a question for Mr. Blake. So currently, you run and own and operate a fitness center, a fitness building of some sort, and then you also supported Beach Road Weekend?
Yes.
So how do you transfer these skills and your business over to becoming sheriff? Are you going to sell your business? Are you going to take a new job?
Well, it's been said that I've had the narrow scope of being a police chief, and that my skills and ability are only in that field, and I want to show that I have had many experiences in my life professionally, and that I have the skills and ability to lead this department, and it excites me to take on this task.
And I have a question for Mr. Ogden. The question I have for you is, so over the 6 years, you've been in 5 years in office right now, going on 6 years?
This is the final 6 years.
You have lobbied to get $14 million from the state to support this decrepit building, is that correct? And 6 recently supported?
$6 million. The other $7 million was to support the regional communication system.
This is for applying for grants and helping our town.
Yeah, it's grants, but also it's lobbying for specific appropriation through A&F and other agencies within the Commonwealth, like DCAM, Division of Capital Assets Management and Maintenance.
What about Mr. Blake? Have you applied for grants to help when you were?
Several.
So did you receive any of them?
I think the question is around experiencing
Grants, absolutely. As the police chief, I was the chief that spearheaded the mobile command unit that you see at functions. That was back in 2003. My department, the police boat that you see, the police, fire, and emergency management boat, that was a grant from the federal government.
What's your total in grant funding?
I couldn't tell you. It was over a 20-year career. It's got to be in the well over $2 million.
Okay, all right, that's it.
Thank you very much. Is there you?
Hello, Mattel, Red Cross. Just a quick question. Given that many of our homeless have a temporary stay in the House of Correction, is there anything in either one of your plans to address the homeless population?
Eric, why don't you start with that question?
Well, it's unfortunate that that's where they end up at the start. I think the sheriff can be a vital asset, not just to social services program, but to the island shelters as well, providing personnel if they need, helping with food assistance and clothing. It's really unfortunate that seems to be the end game for some people that are homeless. There have been amazing strides on this island in that, you've been, that's why you're asking the question, you've been fully involved and congratulations, thank you. Thank you.
Do you want to comment on that, Tom?
Yes. So when homeless individuals come to our facility and are retained in our facility for any amount of time, they are assigned a case manager. And we create a plan, a team plan around trying to support this individual, whether it's through education, cognitive skills, evaluations, mental health evaluations. So we look at the entire person, and we look at through a restorative justice lens. We restore that individual to the community a better person than when they came into the facility, because they're provided with the services they need to overcome those issues. One of the things is we look to see if we can find, full-time housing for the individual that's in our facility. We look to try to develop a job for them. We provide them with specific educational platforms to support their development in the facility. Quite frankly, we just actually, as far as the education is concerned, we actually just received support from the Northeastern University, and we've started a higher education program in the facility where individuals that are incarcerated in our facility have the opportunity to pursue higher education. We actually have one individual right now that's signed up for it that is pursuing Bachelor of Science through Northeastern University. So better outcomes for when they're released is really important. It becomes kind of a revolving door if we don't address those issues and create some kind of restorative ability for these individuals once they leave our facilities.
Okay, I have a quick yes or no question for you. Bob, first, do you support free telephone, tablets, and video conferencing for incarcerated people?
Yes, I do, and we do provide that currently since August.
Eric?
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you. You and the flowers.
Hi, Diane Zilmar. This is for Eric. Did you have a third initiative that I was interested to hear what that was?
Thank you. And it actually dovetails a little bit into what Alona was asking about. Martha's Vineyard is not immune from the mental health crisis in America. Law enforcement officers are consistently the first and the only responders to these calls. They're difficult and often dangerous. Police officers respond when someone is having a mental break and are in danger to themselves or others. Although training and awareness has improved for police officers, they are not fully equipped for these situations. As sheriff, my priority will be to hire a clinical social worker or psychologist who will respond with officers in the field. The Sheriff's Department employee will be a vital asset in assessing the situation, de-escalating the scene, and getting that person the help they need. Similar efforts like this have been done for years throughout the country with great success, and I know that my fellow chiefs and fire chiefs are willing and able to get into this partnership with me. Thank you.
Can I respond to that? It seems like a great idea. It seems like something that's an opportunity here on the island. Unfortunately for us, as far as clinical psychologists are concerned and counselors, we are very weak on how many people are available to perform those obligations. We actually have those services in the facility, and I can just not imagine how much it would cost us or the ability to actually retain that individual and have them become a counselor out on the road. And also, that's a police function. It's not the sheriff's office. Our obligation is to the individuals that are incarcerated, justice-involved individuals. It sounds like a great idea. Unfortunately, I don't feel like there is, in particular, the workforce available to us on Martha's Vineyard to support this kind of action. In the future, if it's possible, I think that a better solution would be to better train our police officers in this ability to de-escalate, to work as a unit, to communicate with the individuals on the street that they're involved with. And I feel like there's other avenues than actually taking that resource out of human services, in particular Martha's Vineyard Community Services or ICC, and utilizing them on the street. I just don't think that there's enough resource there. And you're going to put an individual out, use them in the facility for a certain period of time, their workday, and then assign them out. I don't know anyone that's going to do that.
Thank you. Eric, do you want to comment?
If there wasn't a solution, it wouldn't be a problem. There are people interested in taking on these roles, and the Sheriff's Department has many people that work for him that help out with law enforcement, whether it's the Drug Task Force or the Tactical Response Team. There are employees that actually assist law enforcement all the time.
Thank you.
That's a specialized
And so is this.
counseling service. You'd have to be trained and licensed in actually psychiatric services to provide that service. I just don't see it.
Thank you. Sir.
Yes, this is a question for Sheriff Arlen.
Sure.
I have no doubt that you're a great administrator as far as securing grants and funding for the county. I take my hats off and applaud you for that because the jail does need to be improved. Now, with that said, I've been living here on the island just a little bit longer than you have been in office, and never once have I seen you do any kind of outreach to the community, or working with the community. I mean, maybe I didn't see it or witness it or anything, but even during the protest of 2020, we never saw you out there, never did any outreach, never made any statements. So what are you doing as far as working with the community besides catching funds to build better jails?
I'm sorry you didn't see me. I actually... Or hear me?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I've never seen you before.
You might want to look in the papers because there are several articles that I wrote in particular about our community service and outreach. We have an officer that is our community outreach officer. He works with the students in the schools. We provide a very robust LEAD program, Law Enforcement Against Drugs program, to youth. We also have a very active and supported, actually Joe Carter helped me build it, is an adventure-based counseling system that provides a ropes challenge course to children. Actually, those two services during the COVID pandemic paid great dividends to our children on Martha's Vineyard. It allowed us to remotely provide educational service, health services that health counselors weren't able to provide at the time. And also, when we started to see a little little bit of lean towards an opening in our community again. We provided services so that these kids could get out of their house and have an outside experience.
Can you be a little more specific about what services you're talking about?
Ropes Challenge course, experiential education programs in the schools, and outreach programs. We also provided services to veterans.
But more specifically, where were you when the ban in 2020? Where were you then? We never saw it.
Maybe you never saw me, but I was very active in the community. I actually worked specifically with the elderly and veterans. And actually, sir, when they provided when they were doing the food services for our food needed individuals and families, especially during Thanksgiving and Christmas time, I was out there providing those turkeys to the families and actually supporting them.
Sir, where were you when
I don't know that I haven't answered that. You're asking me if I was in the community. I was in the community. And actually, I was even picking up trash on the sides of the roads because DOT went away. I don't know if you just were not where I was, but I was actually very active in the community.
I'd like to ask Eric to respond to the question regarding community outreach and how you see community outreach.
I think he's specifically, sure, I think he's specifically talking about the marches and protests again with police brutality that happened during that time. I was at every single one of them. I was a leader of the NAACP. I've always shined a light on my police department and its members. I've worked with you and marched by you, been there every step of the way. I was there.
I have another question now from...
Oh, I have to answer. I have to retort to that.
Okay.
I said it before, and I'll say it now, that being the sheriff in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I'm not a police officer, all right? It's a different obligation. We are corrections, and we provide the services that bridge those gaps between law enforcement and the court system.
Thank you. Eric, a question for you around the relationship with the federal government in regard to immigration and ICE. Is there an ICE presence on the island, and would you as a sheriff have a contract with the federal government to enforce immigration laws?
Several years ago, it became very enticing for a lot of law enforcement agencies to take money from the federal government to enter into the 287G program. I couldn't find a more unsuitable program for my police department to be involved with. The relationships that you form with the community would be damaged. I do not support the 287G program. I would follow all state and federal laws when it comes to fingerprinting, and that's how ICE gets informed of people that may have a detainer warrant, but I have no appetite for that.
And Bob?
That's how I would describe it also. We are obligated to fingerprint anyone that comes into our facility, and that is obviously automatically updated to databases. We acknowledge the detainer sent by the ICE, and if they also have signed by a judge, you're obligated legally to respond to that. But yes, we do not, we've never had a 287G here, and we will not.
Thank you. Lady in the green sweater.
Yes, my name is Vicky Duvall. I live in Chilmark. You spoke, Mr. Ogden, Sheriff Ogden, about the fact that the Sheriff's Office is funded by state appropriations and grants. But you did not mention that you come to the towns every single year and ask for money from the towns. In fact, the first year you were in office, you asked for us, the towns, to fund the multi-million-dollar rebuilding of the new system that you're so proud of. And the town said, no, go to the state. And you did, and you got the money. And that's, you should be congratulated for doing that, because that's what you were supposed to do in the first place. But since that time, we've entered into agreements with you, the towns have, that we will step up and pay some of your costs. You're serving the island. We will pay maintenance of your system, but maintenance only. No capital expenses and no operating expenses. That's the responsibility
What's your question?
Of the state. My question is, why do you continue to come to the towns and ask for money to which you are not entitled?
Well, Vicki, we have a long history, right, from the beginning, and to ascribe that somehow I'm stealing money from the towns. Actually, it was voted and put before each town's annual vote, and actually they were voted, those maintenance fees were voted in by the towns, weren't they not? Now, when we talk about the grants obligation, all right, the state does not provide for maintenance of the system, and they made it clear as far as our MOUs when we were developing the grant process. They said that they would pay for the development of the system, all right, and they built it out for us. They said, though, that we needed to go back and create assessments by the towns, so in the future you would maintain the system if things broke or things needed to be replaced. Can I finish my answer first, Vicki? I appreciate that. This was not, it was not an individual decision. This was by committee that we decided to move forward with the development of the system, and I'm sure that the chief that's in the room, and actually Eric would also agree, that the system that we were replacing was catastrophically failing us across the island. There was degradation in our towers. Some of them were almost to failure, to fall down. There was water tanks that were not being able to service or provide those radio whips, and it was a necessity for us. As a matter of fact, the first year that I took office, in January, I was called by my communication center to tell us that the entire system had crashed, and we did not have a backup generator. So actually, it was vital that we did this and moved as quickly as we did, and were able to secure that kind of funding by the state. It saved E911.
Do you want to comment on the funding for the system?
I think...
And the money from the towns?
I think what I'm hearing, and I've heard from Vicki and I've heard from other finance committee members, is they don't feel that the contract that they've signed is transparent, and they feel like they got to go along to get along. I don't know if that's necessarily completely the case, but I will sit down with them and look at it, and if it's not clear what they're paying for, we'll make it clear. I had to do that every year on town meeting floor.
Bob, could you give the mic back to Eric, please?
No, I'm finished.
He's finished.
Fine.
Actually, this is near and dear to my heart, okay? This was a 6-year journey, odyssey, to actually develop a system that everybody wanted, but nobody wanted to be responsible for. Right? The Sheriff's Office was not obligated to be responsible for it as the PSAP, Public Safety Access Point. We took on the obligation because we were the state entity, independent state agent of the state, and were provided with the grant process. And actually, one second, can I finish, please?
Hang on just a second.
They're also...
Madam, could you ask your follow-up question in about 10 words?
Yes, I can. This past year, you asked us for money from the towns to do a backup system for Edgartown because the big new shiny system that you built doesn't provide safe communications in Edgartown. So
This is things that have been debated in town committees.
Is Edgartown covered by your system, and are we paying for the fact that Edgartown isn't covered by your system, sir?
Just a couple of sentences.
Actually, those charges, those fees to the assessments were voted on by committee, by town managers, town administrators. So when you say that I asked for that money, there was 2 advisory committees in place that were part of the obligation of the grant. There's a technical committee, and there's also a financial committee. They meet. We ask them for those assessments. We tell them what we're going to use them for.
Frustrating me, sir.
If this was not considered a debate, and I think that she's attacking me, I'd rather her not ask me any more questions, quite frankly.
Person in the way back.
This is usual, Vicki.
Going back to mental health.
Usual.
Oh, sorry, Christy. Calvin. Going back to mental health, it's a crisis in this country, not just in Martha's Vineyard, understanding that. We talked about what the responsibilities of law enforcement is, de-escalation. I think that's all true. But going back to what you all could do, in your role as sheriff,
what is some of the outside-of-box thinking for people who are already incarcerated, who have mental health issues that tend to be more justice involved? So what are some of the solutions that you guys have once they're justice involved?
Ellen, why don't you take that question first? Did you hear it?
I did hear it. To make sure that the programs that are currently in place are being used and utilized to their fullest extent. There are psychological services at the jail. There's medication opportunities, but you also need to have a safe and secure area where, you know, the rule is not punishment, it's rehabilitation and getting better. That's what, while they're actually justice involved.
Thank you, Bob.
Can I answer?
Yep.
Sure. Actually, we've invested in technology because we couldn't retain psychiatric services and counseling services at community service because they were so taxed by what's going on in our country with opioid and drug addiction, narcotic issues. So we actually used a formula, a plan that's being used in some of the other correctional facilities in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and we contracted out with a company called CPS, which is Correctional Psychiatric Services. This is real time, so instead of waiting to see if we can actually get a psychiatrist or a psychologist to come to our facility to evaluate an individual in our care, we can evaluate in real time using a tablet or allowing them to use a computer system to actually, whoever's the case counselor in the facility actually utilizes that to actually evaluate this individual and see what's the best care for the person that's justice involved and having issues as far as psychiatric services can provide. So it's a good service.
Further comments on that?
No, ma'am.
And what about drug and alcohol rehabilitation services to prisoners? Do you offer that in the jail?
Yes, we have a multidisciplinary approach to those in custody as far as drugs and alcohol are concerned. We provide psychiatric services, like I said. There's a medical-assisted treatment program. We collaborate with recovery coach volunteers. We have a very robust AA and NA meetings program. We have mindfulness programs, medical services, and community outreach programs. So when an individual comes into our facility, they are fully cared for with a broad range of services.
Thank you. Any comments on that?
Next question.
Next question. Yes.
Yes, my name is Mary Shepherd-Rich from Tewksbury, and I just have a quick question about the program that we have in Edgartown.
Both speak up, please.
Oh, sorry.
Back here.
I have a quick question about the Edgartown service, the emergency service. Is that up and running right now?
Is the Edgartown Emergency Services up and running right now?
And is it fully functioning?
I'm not sure what are you talking about regional communications?
Yes, communication.
Actually, I'm glad you asked that. It is functioning, all right? There are some spot areas that are of concern. When they were broached by the Edgartown chief, we immediately went back to our vendor and the state to find solutions to solve a problem. The reality of it is that the biggest issue with Edgartown was they didn't have property to put a tower on. They weren't able to negotiate with Verizon to provide a space on the Pennywise Path Tower, and the water department refused to put any antennas or more antennas on their water tank. They said it was aesthetically displeasing. Now, I don't know about you guys, but that prophylactic that is a water tower is pretty displeasing, and I'm not sure that putting a few whips and some conduit on it would cause it to be any more aesthetically displeasing than it is. So anyways, we didn't have a real solution to where we would put it because the town of Edgartown didn't have the ability to provide us with one. So actually what we did was we evaluated other sites, and we actually located a site on Chappaquiddick. It's a WISP tower there, and we utilized that tower, which was privately owned, to provide the radio signal from Chappaquiddick. Not ideal, right? We would rather have one in town, right? Because there's a lot of topographical issues that we have to overcome, geographic issues. But when the service was still being, affected, there's a lot of things that affect a radio signal, especially VHF system. It can be astronomical issues, solar flares. It could be some type of distortion in the towns that would cause something to happen in certain areas of the communications. But when the town asked us to try to find solutions, we brought our contractor back and did many tests in the community, and we decided to put in another system, a microwave, which was asked for by the town. We've actually put that in at the sheriff's office because we also had a conduit there that would provide the service. It was fiber. The town did not have the fiber that they needed in town, and the fee was astronomical for it. So we actually saved the town, I think it was about $6,000 or $7,000 per year.
Thank you. Do you have any comments on the communication system, Eric?
Sure. As the only candidate that's actually received a 911 dispatch call, it's imperative that this gets fixed immediately. I will not venture out into other areas with the radio system until this issue is solved. I'm not a technical person. I don't run the system, so I don't know what it is, but I tell you what, I will bring people together that want me to listen to them, to hear their problems, and then solve their problems.
And Eric, different question. What do you think your relationship will be with the newly elected local district attorney, and how will the sheriff relate to the district attorney?
I'm encouraged that there's going to be a new district attorney, to say the least. The current relationship is not what it should be. One thing I want to try to do with the new district attorney and law enforcement leaders and probation is to look at the records of young men and women on Martha's Vineyard that may have a non-violent crime on their records, where they maybe were found to have a continue without a finding or a dismissed at pre-trial. Those blemishes on your record, when you're an employer and you're trying to hire someone, you look at the person that maybe have an alcohol charge and then maybe a disorderly charge, and then you have someone with a clean record. I want to see if we can wipe those clean. There's no need to have those on people's records. I'm hoping that the district attorney will engage me with that.
I'm really hoping that our Democratic candidate, Rob Gallibois, actually gets the nod. He's an incredible guy, and he's actually spent more time on the island during this campaign than Mike O'Keefe has in the last decade. So actually having him here, we've really opened up a dialogue and conversation about how the DA's office can, set change in our judicial system. One thing in particular is diversion programming and BRACEA programs. They were very robust on the island for several years through probation. When the Commonwealth of Massachusetts decided that we didn't have the population enough to continue the service and actually eliminated community corrections on Martha's Vineyard. As a matter of fact, where our communication system, a public safety access point is up at the airport, was originally built by correctional community services through probation. I feel like that re-engaging in the court system to find potential candidates for diversion, we're actually doing this currently, and especially individuals that are seeking medical assisted treatment and rehabilitative services, instead of making them come and serve at our facility, we are looking for beds for them at Gosnold or Wellpath, and if we're able to do that and secure a bed, the judge is very open to putting them on a diversion program so they don't actually end up in our facilities at all. I think that's a real benefit from the DA's office.
Hi, my name is Susan Larson. I'm from Chilmark, and I'm the retired education person at the jail up 2018. My question is, what are your services for your bilingual community? So you have some residents who are staying at the jail. What services are for?
Bob, you go first with a quick answer, and then
Well, actually, our educator just purchased a plethora of books for bilingual individuals, actually someone that is not English first language. And we've actually, again, with the adult, we have another platform, whether it's CPS, which was the Correctional Psychiatric Services, and we also have an educational platform called Adovo. And Adovo is bilingual. And it allows individuals in our facility to partake in educational services. There's over 300 plus educational platforms that individuals in our facility can utilize, whether it's for technical skills training, high-SEP program, high school program equivalency, higher education. These platforms are at their fingertips in this system, and we provide that to individuals in our facility as an educational platform, and it's paid dividends, especially with individuals that are bilingual. We also have several of our correctional officers that are bilingual. I have one of the most BIPOC staff in all of law enforcement on Martha's Vineyard.
Eric, you've worked with people from other backgrounds. Do you have a comment on the bilingual programs?
That was a question for him, so I'm being very... Yes, I want to make sure that those opportunities are as robust as possible. There's, every program and assistance that we can to make sure people view their stay as positive and rehabilitative. Then absolutely, the fact that they're there in the first place is a hardship in their lives, and if we don't have the services, the bilingual services, that's even worse.
Thank you. Yes, you.
My name is Lolly Hand. I live in Tisbury. You both agree that the jail facility is in dreadful condition, and we have $6 million to improve it. Is your vision to renovate or to build a new facility? If you want a new facility, where would it be? And is $6 million enough to do the project, or is there going to be more funds needed? And if so, where would those dollars come from?
A new facility is several years away, and I believe I have the leadership skills and the problem-solving skills to bring together the people that need to be together to get this project done. If it is to be done, I'm also open to exploring, like Nantucket does, having people sent over to Barnstable County. If our justice involved, our numbers don't justify spending the millions of dollars on building a new facility. I am not for an expanded facility. I am for rehabbing the facility that we currently have. It's completely inadequate, and it's well past its useful life.
So the original proposal by the Commonwealth was $3 million. I actually was able to, through a construction plan and an organizational plan, explain what it was really necessary. This will be a build out of the structure that is currently there. We'll do it in place, because we don't have any place else to put it. Obviously, like Eric said, for decades they've talked about a criminal justice complex that would include the court system, the jail lockup, house of correction, possibly state police, all in one complex, and it's been cost effective in other areas in the Commonwealth. That, again, is something down the line. We really haven't been able to acquire a space that would allow us to do that. But in the meantime, it's important that we make sure that we have a safe, secure facility for the individuals that come into our custody. Remember, we do over 800 bookings per year, 800 arrests. It needs to be a place that's safe for these individuals, whether it's females or males coming into our facility. And the necessity is now, I mean, whether it's communications or whether it's the jail and lockup and house of correction, I inherited these things that are in dire need of replacement. These aren't things that we can wait for somebody to die in. I want to make something in particular perfectly clear to the individuals that think that we shouldn't do something with the facility, the 1873 facility. We went to the state first off and asked them, can we rehabilitate the facility that's in place? All right? First off, we have manual locking systems, no automatic locking systems. So you can't actually open a cell unless you use a skull key, a copper skull key. All right, that's archaic. We actually went to a place that's a locksmithing place that teaches kids to be locksmithing, and I touched one of their antiques, and they said, don't touch it, don't touch it, it's an antique, you're gonna mess with it. I said, are you kidding me? It was 1902 on theirs, ours are 1873, and we still use them in our facility. The other big scary part about it is this: if there's a fire in that facility, everyone's gonna die. Because on the second floor, there are no secondary egresses, and there are no modern water suppression, fire suppression in the facility. Those are all necessities. We're talking about human lives
But
here.
you're both agreeing that what is needed is for renovations of this building.
Oh, absolutely.
And we've already acquired the money already.
My question, I just want to, the question was, is $6 million enough?
Yes.
Okay.
We have time for 2 more questions, and then closing remarks. Sir, you haven't asked a question yet.
Yes. Joe.
Hey, Joe.
Hi, Joe.
In terms of alcohol, drug abuse, victims, persons, and mental health, how many counselors do you have and on staff, and what are their certifications? And how many homeless people have you served at the jail this year?
It's hard to equate how many homeless people, quite frankly.
You don't keep statistics?
We do keep statistics, but that's not one that, aside from the fact that they might not have a residence here on the island, we don't know that they're, unless they provide that information to us, we don't know whether they're homeless or not. Some of them are. What was the other question? I'm sorry, what was the other piece of the question?
How many counselors do you have on staff, full-time, part-time, and what are their certifications? Drug, help, you mentioned you have alcohol abuse.
We have
counselors.
we don't have counselors that are on our staff. We have a human service director, which is a case manager, and she's highly certified in all those areas of drug
Is that a full-time position?
counseling. Yes, it is. Yeah, she's amazing. Now, what she does is she outsources those people so that we can actually have counselors on a regular basis. Quite frankly, the workforce in these areas are diminished on Martha's Vineyard. There's not enough beds, there's not enough facilities, and actually, we are one of the safest places to actually have these individuals because of the wraparound services that we provide. The biggest obligation in our community is to develop this even more. We try our best to actually connect to the community once this individual is coming out of our facility. Unfortunately, we just don't have the resources here. Community service is taxed to the hilt. The hospital is taxed. There's no beds for these individuals. So I think that in the next term, I will work with legislation to address those issues. Why isn't Department of Public Health and Department of Mental Health held accountable? I don't hear anything from them. Isn't that what they do? Isn't that their obligation? But the issues come back to us is what the services that we can provide. We provide the best services, the most economical services we can with our funding to provide the best services in the facility we can. I think that with the new facility, our medical staff and our ability to actually provide those services will increase. We do have 2 licensed nurses in the facility now. We only had 1 aging one. We brought a nurse in, and actually, while she was getting her nursing certificate, she worked for us as an assistant nurse, and now she's a full-time. And that's a skill, in particular as a nurse, as a correctional nurse, that's a skill that doesn't come along a lot, and we're really proud of it.
Eric, what would be your goals for staff and for mental health?
Yeah, those wraparound services that happen in the jail need to extend after the incarceration and make sure that the employees that are responsible for that while they're incarcerated help when the person is out with access to like MV Hub, the clearinghouse for all social services on the island. It's a great program. Look it up if you don't know.
We use them.
Don't interrupt you.
Okay. So question? Flowers? Okay, you can both go. Quick question.
I just wanted to respond. Nobody's saying that people who are incarcerated don't deserve to be treated with dignity. I actually wrote the Dignity for Incarcerated Women Act. What we're saying is, what else besides increasing prison and jail beds can happen within the community that provide the resources for people so that they don't have to continue to cycle in and out of your
I think I suggested also that there are diversion programs that we utilize here on the island. I think that the Elmo program and the Bracer program for probation should be expanded. We're providing the services as far as getting beds for these individuals to go to, which will allow them to get on the Bracer program and not serve their time with us. Also remember this too, we have a very small house of correction.
Yes.
All right?
Yes.
Very small population in the House of Correction. The average population per year is approximately 18 to 20, and that hasn't changed. The only time that it ever changed that number was during COVID, which is a 2-year anomaly. Outside of that, it hasn't changed at all. And our funding, our financial funding, our general appropriation is tied to our House of Correction. They do not recognize the services of jail and lockup on the island, which is an essential service. If we, like I said before, if we eliminate those services, the obligation and onus would be on the towns. And I just don't think that they can afford that kind of money.
Eric, do you want to maybe comment on that?
No, I'm all set.
And one final question, sir.
Yes, this is for the sheriff. You have a MOU in place with Martha's Vineyard Mediation Program. What I would like to know is when is that going to move forward and be active? Because Governor Baker sent a group of people to be trained through the Maryland mediation process to help these people transition back into the community. Where do you stand on that, and is that going forward?
It's still in the development stage as far as our facility is concerned, and actually being able to house that kind of service in our facility. I am for that. I think it's a great avenue. We've actually, I think most of the law enforcement has had an opportunity to see what that can accomplish if it's used correctly in our community. I think that it needs to be sussed out a little bit more in development and opportunities on the island. Again, it's all about resources and our ability to actually provide these services on the island when our workforce is so lean. I think that in the future, if we can actually identify individuals that can support that, I think it's a viable resource.
Yes, it's
Eric, do you want to comment on mediation?
I'm interested to hear about that program. More importantly to me is before it even happens, my police department, when they were trying to do the restorative justice program on the Vineyard, Peter Melanie got it started. And if anyone's familiar with it, it's when police officers bring individuals together. One committed a crime, one was a victim of a crime, and they both have to agree. They have to make them whole monetarily. They have to apologize. They have to hear how it affected them. It's a great process. It's actually more efficient than low-level court actions. It really is. The problem we had, circling back to the district attorney's office, is there was jurisdictional issues. They wanted us to vet every single case through them, and they would decide whether they get charged or not. I don't believe that should be the case. If a police officer has an opportunity to bring justice to a situation that's of a non-violent crime that could be mediated through that situation, I'm all for it.
And
again, it's a police function also. That most of this is being provided through the police departments.
No, this is actually the sheriff department. I'm actually part of the program. I'm one of the trained mediators. We have an MOU in place with the sheriff department. I'm just asking, when is that going to move forward?
Haven't executed it.
Right. I mean, it's been in place for almost 2 years now.
thank you, sir.
During COVID too.
Okay, I'm going to give each of the candidates 2 minutes for closing remarks and any rebuttals they want to make. And Eric, would you like to go first, please?
Absolutely. I want to thank the League of Women Voters, everyone here, and the sheriff for participating in today's event. The role of Dukes County Sheriff is a powerful one, overseeing the jail, regional lockup, house of correction, 911 communications, civil process, community programs. The Sheriff's Department has many programs and initiatives in all of those areas. I look forward to an opportunity to use my vast public safety experience to analyze all of them critically to ensure that those programs operate as intended and have the most significant positive impact on our communities. Programs like DARE, Restorative Justice, Community Corrections, Triad will be evaluated so that we are deploying these programs with the most efficiency and the greatest good for the community. As sheriff, I'll reestablish relationships fractured by the current administration to ensure that the office of sheriff is viewed as a vital partner with public safety leaders, elected officials, and town administrators. I have demonstrated throughout my 35-year career that I have the abilities, the temperament, and the knowledge to lead this organization into the future. When I retired this past June, I welcomed a fresh set of eyes and different way of doing things into the department that I led for almost 20 years. My hope is that the voters of Dukes County feel the same way about the office of Dukes County Sheriff and vote for me on September 6th. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Bob?
First, I'd like to say that DARE hasn't been on the island for a decade. The new program is LEAD program, and it's evidence-based program that's provided in the schools currently. As your sheriff, I'm committed to continued progress. With the stable foundation we created, I have a clear vision of the future. It includes a new facility that will combine the regional jail, house of correction, and lockup, allowing female housing, as well as trial court and potentially state police barracks. We have taken first steps in this long-term plan in securing status of the regional lockup by legislation. I was the only sheriff to have legislation written into the Police Reform Act. And having worked with the Division of Capital Assets and Management and Maintenance on life and safety upgrades to our current facility while we plan for a new one. In my next term as your sheriff, I will leverage our upgraded E911 communication system in anticipation of integration with the Commonwealth's upgrade of digital-based Commerce, Commonwealth of Massachusetts interoperable radio system network that would improve emergency communications and interoperability and connect us regionally to other first responder networks. I thank you for spending this time with me today for the opportunity to answer your questions. I'd like to take a moment, though, to say that it's been my honor and privilege to be your sheriff over the last 6 years, and God willing, I will be again. I'd just like to recognize my incredible team, my staff, the people that really do the work behind the scenes, in particular, Peter Grazikowski, who's my CFO, Jim Neville, who is my superintendent, Bob Moore, who's my educator in the room, amazing guy, Kayla Pacheco, his human services, Susie Schofield with communications, Anthony Gold, who is our new technical radio engineer on the island. He's been an incredible resource and valuable. Woody Arujo, long-term lieutenant colonel in our facility. I started with Woody, and all the other staff, in particular Amanda Semino was our nurse, and Greg Arpin, who's invaluable to police across the island. He's actually not only our major of operations, but also acts as the commander of the tactical response team on the island. When they needed him, he was there and is invaluable. I'd also like to thank my beautiful wife of 30 years. I could not be here without her. She just drove around and let me rant before we came in here, because honestly, this is not an easy process. And I love you very much, Jeannie, and I really appreciate your support. So in closing, I'd just like to thank you for spending this time with me today and for opportunity to answer your questions. Dukes County needs a sheriff with proven acumen, a successful legislative advocate to continue the momentum we have built during my term. It is my honor to be running for re-election. to once again fulfill the promises of our community. Thank you.
Well, thank you both. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Chief Blake. I thank Allison for the use of the library, Michelle for her videotaping. If you're interested in seeing this all over again, or if some of your friends who weren't able to be here want to look, it'll be available on Thursday on MZTV website for streaming. And good night. Thank you all for coming.